Hey guys, welcome to another GameXplain discussion. I'm your host, Andrew Seegers, and we're again joined by Derek Binder to discuss the latest screenshots from the past week for Super Smash Bros. Wii U and 3DS. So let's get right into it. Alright Derek, so we already covered, the biggest announcement of the week being Lucario's, coming back. But before that, we already had like a lot of things to talk about. This week was just filled with new announcements or new details of things we may have already known, little bits and pieces of. So let's get right into it, with Monday's picture, which was of Rosalina, and it just basically gave us a little bit more details about one of her moves that we saw before in her trailer, which is the Gravitational Pull, as it's apparently called, which is her special that allows her to pull items right to her. Now, again, we saw this in the trailer. It pointed out that it pulled, in the trailer we see it pull 3 or 4 items right to her, including one being thrown at her. And even then, we noted how she pulled a Pokeball that was being thrown at her, but when the Pokeball hit the ground, it didn't actually activate. And we know why for sure, and that's because Sakurai confirms that any items that are thrown at her will be deactivated when it's caught in her gravitational pull. Or more specifically, he says disabled. So the answer is one of our big questions that we had back then, which is if someone's throwing a bomb at her, could this be a potentially dangerous move? Apparently, going off of this, apparently no. It will just deactivate that bomb and just drop it back on the ground, or that's my take on this.
Yeah, that's what I got from it. It's a very interesting move. I mean, with bombs, you'll have to be very quick about it and have to be very situationally aware, but that could be a huge benefit to anybody playing Rosalina.
Right, so I'm actually not sure how I feel about this. I mean, again, I'm only going off conjecture, what we can take away from this, because we haven't played it, so perhaps it works great. But, originally it seemed like a kind of cool, potentially a risk versus reward type thing. Where, you could use it to pull items near you, but you have to be careful when you use it and make sure, someone's not throwing a potentially dangerous item at you. But now it just seems like, conversely, now it just seems like a really good move. It's a really powerful move that just, that, as far as I can tell, I see, there's no reason not to use it.
Well, I can see one detriment, and I'm trying to think back to the trailer now, and it seems like that move does take a little while. She's in that motion for quite a while during that trailer. I mean, that whole clip is basically her performing that move.
Yeah, but
she's doing it as it's getting sucked in.
Right. Oh, I see what you're saying.
So that leaves her completely open if she does it, and you could let's say you're playing Link, you take out a bomb, you throw it at her, and then you bum rush her with your sword.
Right.
She'll catch the bomb, but she's going to take that sword.
Yeah, I guess that is kind of built-in, disincentive to using it, in just that it will potentially leave you vulnerable. But I think I'd rather that than taking a bomb to the face. So yeah, I mean, that is interesting. So that is an interesting new detail. It does confirm something we suspected, and it does it does make it seem like she has the potential to be a really powerful character.
Yeah, absolutely. The more I see of Rosalina, the more I'm liking of her, and the moves are interesting. I love how they worked in the whole pointer functionality from Galaxy into the game. I think that's really clever. The big question I still have with this is, yeah, it sucks up items and weapons, but what about items like I mentioned Link earlier with his bombs? What about his arrows? Would they be canceled out? What would happen to those, or is that just going to go through?
Oh, that's a good one. Well, he specifically mentions items and weapons and not projectiles. I mean, rather, I'm clarifying that he said items and weapons, and he didn't say projectiles.
That's true.
Right. So my guess is it only pertains to things that you can pick up yourself. And since you can't pick up arrows or most other projectiles, I'm guessing they won't apply there.
Yeah, I think you're right now that you mentioned that. It makes sense for it. It seems to be balanced out, so you can still use projectiles, and I like it.
Now that I think about it, what if you actually threw an item at Rosalina to make her use her gravitational pull, and then you follow up with a charged shot at Samus or something? I could see some real strategy potentially, coming from this move, basically playing mind games. Forcing Rosalina to do something and then following up, making her vulnerable and then following up with a big attack.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. Tuesday's screenshot is kind of cool because it shows off a new item apparently, being the Beetle from Skyward Sword. And in fact, Sakurai even confirms that it is an item, saying the Beetle item from The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword is a comical item that grabs characters and carries them into the air. So he mentioned item twice, which means it's not, it wasn't like a slip of the tongue. This is pretty clearly an item and not a new ability of Link's. So now the question is still like, what exactly, how exactly does this work? He gave us just a little tidbit of, it takes them into the air, but like, does it hold them in place, or does it keep, carrying them, sky high and then drop them eventually, or does it just keep carrying them off into, into a KO potentially?
Yeah, that's he doesn't go into specifics. The way the angle works, I always just kind of assumed that it would grab somebody and keep moving in a like upper angle, and eventually just disappear, and the person would drop.
Right.
And that's still my gut reaction to how it'll actually work. But your other methods could still totally be possible. What's interesting to me is that he specifically mentions that this is more of a comical item.
Right.
So there's not a whole. It's like you're not really having a lot of advantages to using this, but I can still see some situations in games that this would really help. For one, just setting up air combos. Another option is like, let's say somebody's trying to get back to the ledge, and you prevent them from reaching it by using this grab. And I'm not sure if this will grant them another third jump, but if they've already used the third jump and it doesn't grant them that, that's a way to just send them away and send them to the doom. So it's kind of cool, I think.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see how this actually works, in action. I suspect how it works is, based on the game, the Beetle traveled at pretty much a set rate. So you couldn't stop it or have it hover in air. Because it says it's a comical item, like I could see it moving quickly, like when you first throw it. And then I guess that's another question: is does it just travel in a straight line, or does it home in on people, perhaps? I'm kind of picturing it as like it flies quickly, in the direction you throw it, maybe homing in slightly, and then like maybe it's slow. Once it grabs someone, maybe it slows down a little bit while you see the character like struggling to free themselves from its grip.
It's a cool item, and it's nice to see a new item that isn't a gun.
Yeah, that's true. That is a good thing. I almost kind of wish, though, it gets back to what we've talked about before when they announced Zelda, that I kind of wish this were maybe just part of the Link's moveset, like replace his boomerang with something new. You base Link more on his Skyward Sword incarnation as opposed to his Twilight Princess, incarnation, which we've seen plenty of already.
Which isn't a bad idea, but I think the problem with that is the boomerang's more iconic. I can't see the Beetle showing up again in another game outside maybe one or two.
Yeah, but we already have Toon Link, who still has a boomerang too.
True enough.
So that's why I think it'd be good to differentiate, Twilight Princess Link is even more so from Wind Waker Link. Although, I think what they should have done is make, also make Wind Waker Link more like Wind Waker Link, and less like normal Link. Let him use his leaf as a recovery, or any of the other items he had access to in that game.
It's potentially you'd like, but they have it set up, and I guess they don't want to mess with the formula and don't want to mess with people who are used to these characters. And
I don't care about that. Make Luigi like Luigi's Mansion. Don't make him like all those previous, Luigi Smash Brothers, Mario clone type things. All right,
true.
But we're getting off topic here. Moving on, we'll go on to Wednesday, which is perhaps the biggest news of the week besides Lucario, for a couple of reasons. One, it appears to be of a new stage from Kid Icarus specifically, and we know this because it has a statue of the Goddess of Light right in the forefront, and that is Palutena. So one, I'm wondering, is this just Sakurai trolling us still, like based on the supposed Palutena link last week?
Yeah. I think he's enjoying this.
Yeah, so a lot of people were wondering if, because she's a statue in the game, does that mean that she's not, a character, in Smash Brothers? Which I don't think that it means anything. If anything, I think it might lend credibility to the fact that she's a playable character, because this is actually this statue appeared in Kid Icarus Uprising, in Chapter 20, Palutena's Temple level. And looking just like this, including the podium she's on.
Including the wings in the back is probably the more definite feature.
Right. The way
the wings are presented.
Exactly. It's uncanny. Like, this is definitely a reference to that statue, if not that entire level. And the fact that, Palutena, appeared prominently in that game, in fact, you even fought her in that same chapter, I think just continues to suggest that this does not disprove the fact that she is a playable character here. So yeah, I think that actually might, hint even more at it. So my question is, like, what is the stage going to be exactly?
It was more of an arena in Uprising,
right?
So maybe it'll be just sort of basic like that, but it's since we're seeing a much more of an aerial view and it's focused much more on the statue, it's kind of impossible to stay. I don't think it'll be another traveling stage. I think this one is very much set in where it's at. So we might be looking at a much more simplistic stage, something along the lines of like, the Yoshi's Island stages.
It's certainly possible. In researching before this discussion, you were taking a look at Chapter 20 again, where we saw the same statue from Kid Icarus. And in that game, it's huge. The statue is gigantic. Like, and it's also really high up. Like, it towers over everything. So it's making me wonder if we're actually even seeing the battle part of the stage itself. Like, I'm almost thinking that this statue might just be part of the background, and you don't actually interact with it. So we may not actually have seen any part of the actual battle arena itself.
That's very possible. As you said, it's huge. It's in the background. It towers over the arena. So, and he even mentions the arena in his description. So I think you're right. This is just an upper part. He's not showing off the stage itself. It's just a nice, once again, a tease.
Right, and he even mentions she's watching over the arena, which I think could be taken as a hint at her, at this being more of a background detail.
That's all well and good, but the thing that has me the most confused with this is that he's been saying from day one that the stages in the Wii U version will be based on console games,
right,
while the 3DS version will be portable games. This is pretty clear, almost pretty clearly from Uprising, which again is a portable game. Now, of course, they got around this with the Gerudo Valley level for 3DS because Ocarina of Time 3D on the 3DS.
Right.
But I don't see any workaround like this unless they're going to try to claim this is the Sky Temple, or the that takes place at the end of the original Kid Icarus on the NES. I don't see that happening, but they might try to claim that just to maybe they'll throw in a few hints from that game to try to increase its connection with console editions of Kid Icarus.
That is an interesting idea. Kid Icarus, as you mentioned, did start off on the Nintendo, so that would be a cool little throwback. But it does seem to be based, as we mentioned, more on Kid Icarus Uprising, specifically with the statue matching it, apparently perfectly. So maybe it confirms that Kid Icarus Uprising's coming to the Wii U. Yeah, I mean that'd actually be awesome if they ported it, with updated visuals and whatnot. But I don't know what to make of this. I mean, the only other thing I can think of is maybe it's a hint, or maybe it suggests that they're not sticking entirely to their ideology of having, handheld-based arenas on the 3DS version and vice versa for the console version. So maybe they are just switching it up here.
It's very interesting. It really feels like with this stage, just with anything related to Kid Icarus, really, like Sakurai is really playing with us.
it does. And we've talked about before how he was heavily involved with Kid Icarus Uprising, so it makes sense that he would bring as much as possible from that into this new game, much as he did with the Kirby series and in subsequent Smash Brothers games, which he was also involved with. So I really do think this, I think there's a very strong chance that Palutena is a playable character in this, and I think this arena only supports that further. But again, it's still odd that it's appearing on the Wii U, so maybe we'll see even more arenas that cross over from the handheld to the, console version of Smash Brothers and vice versa. Okay, moving on to Thursday's screenshot. It doesn't really show a ton that's new, at least not in the picture itself. We just see Link and Pit firing arrows at each other. But Sakurai clarifies in his post a little bit, saying that both Link and Pit use bows, but when they fire at the same time, their arrows meet and cancel out closer to Pit. Besides attack power and projectile speed, there are many elements that affect tactics, such as accuracy, vulnerability after attacking, and even seemingly unrelated features like a character's physical abilities.
It's basically just saying how, tactics and whatnot is going to make it a bigger effect.
Right.
Which, is something that we all knew from previous games.
Right.
The most interesting line in here, though, is that it's saying their arrows meet and cancel out closer to Pit. To me, what that says is that Link fires his bow much quicker than Pit.
Right.
But because of that, it's probably more than likely that Pit's arrow does more damage than Link's.
Yeah, I mean, that would make sense. And I wonder how that compares. I mean, we can already go back and test that in Brawl to see if that's even any different then. Like, I wonder if this is a new thing, or is it just how it worked in Brawl too?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I played with Pit a little bit, but I've never compared speeds of how fast bows go off. The only notable thing I remember about Pit's bow is that you could angle the shots.
Yeah, no, that was cool. I actually much preferred Pit's bow versus Link's bow. So, Link's bow has always been kind of weak sauce, I found, at least. Especially because I think, as I recall, you can actually charge it up to shoot the arrows farther, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas Pit didn't have to do that. He just straight up fired it and just kept going indefinitely, as I remember. So, yeah. So I wonder if they're making more of a conscious effort this time in terms of like projectiles and how they interact with each other, and like taking into account all their different attributes like speed and power and all that. Perhaps more so than before. Because we saw, what was it, just last week, where Sakurai delved into some of the more deeper gameplay mechanics a little bit. So I do just kind of wonder if he's taking that in even more account here. Especially with some of the reactions to some of the choices he made in Brawl. So I wonder if that is more of a conscious undertaking he's taking this time, and just balancing everything.
It's probably more than likely that's what he's doing. It's it's not a bad idea. I think he is trying to appeal to the fans while also doing what he feels is best for the series. So I think he's trying to strike a balance, and from what I've seen so far, he seems to be doing a pretty decent job.
All right, the final picture of the day was of Lucario, and of course they had a whole bunch of screenshots on the official website as well. And we already talked about this in depth in a discussion we posted yesterday. But there were a few details in some of the screenshots that we didn't cover. So I figured now would be a good time to go over them. Now, one of the screenshots shows off a little bit more of the Mario Kart arena. Now, it's not anything special. We already knew you'd be landing in various parts of the arena. And this time we can see that one of the places you'll be landing is actually near the end of the level, near the end of the course. At the point, at this part where there's like a bunch of them. It's basically a straightaway broken up into different gaps that you'll be jumping. And you'll jump those gaps using the ramps shown in the picture. And you'll fly through those little stars shown here. So there's not a whole lot to be taken away from this. But I think you had some ideas with regards to how it might interface with the battle, right?
Well, if they land directly on the track, what could be happening here is that they already showed that Shy Guys are driving along the track as you're fighting.
Right.
And we've seen before, like in Mute City or Melee for F-Zero, the cars would go by and run into everybody. So that might be what they're trying to do here with the Shy Guys. And one of the ways you can avoid getting hit by them is ducking like right next to the ramp, so they'll fly over you. Conversely, if you're at the air at the time, you'll get hit by them going over the ramp. So it might just be a further introduction of other stage hazards that this Rainbow Road presents.
Now that is an interesting idea, being able to like crouch near a ramp and avoid taking damage. But my question is, it looks like it appears to me that those ramps are actually in the background. So I don't think you'll be able to do that. Instead, I think you're fighting, directly in front of them. So you'll actually have to, you won't actually be anywhere near those ramps, and you'll actually have to dodge the incoming Shy Guys, like actively, coming in from the background.
That could also be cool. Like they hit a ramp and they fly over the stage that you're fighting on.
Exactly. Because if you look at the picture here, like we can tell that from the angle that, like if you adjust the camera so it's to the side of Lucario, you can see that those ramps should be in the background. So I think that's going to be the case.
Ooh, that's still pretty cool.
Yeah, no, it's definitely still cool.
Going different, trying to get on different platforms to try to dodge out of the way of oncoming carts. That sounds fun to me. Yeah,
could be. Now there's one other picture here of Lucario that's really interesting. And that is, it shows him, Mario, and Mega Man taking on the Yellow Devil from the Mega Man arena. Now, before, every time we've seen Yellow Devil before, it's always been, at most, 2 characters in the screenshot, or in the video or whatever. This is the first time we've seen 3, because we were wondering before if he was a stage hazard, or if he might be a boss battle as part of like a single-player adventure mode. And we thought that because, in Brawl, you could play 2 players in the Subspace Emissary. And so it would make sense that you could still have that 2-player co-op going on. while going through, this game's single-player adventure, taking on bosses. So I'm not quite sure what to make of this, because the fact that there's 3 people here might mean that it's actually a stage hazard, and that you're just it's just something to be avoided. But the fact that it almost looks like Mario's kicking Lucario in the head, and Lucario's not taking any damage, suggests that this is actually, like, they're actually working as a team to take on the Yellow Devil, which might actually imply that co-op does return for the single-player adventure mode, that this is actually in the single-player adventure, and the fact that it actually supports, if not just 3 players, maybe 4 players as well.
Yeah, that's certainly true, because if it is a regular stage and they're, the Yellow Devil is a stage hazard, the placement on all 3 of these characters is damn near perfect.
Right.
They're so close to one another, and they're not hitting one another. Now, what they could have done to achieve this picture is that there's always been team battles. So they could have placed all 3 of them on a team, have another character be another team, and push them aside.
Oh, that's true.
Not in the picture. So there's ways that they can manipulate this picture. But going off, looking at it alone, it's still... My gut is telling me now that it's probably a stage hazard and just Sakurai playing with the pictures and playing with the fact that it's in there. But I would certainly welcome a potential 4-player single-player mode, 4-player co-op adventure mode, I guess would be the best way to say it.
I mean, it's almost kind of surprising that it hasn't already happened. I mean, maybe it's just too chaotic, but it makes so much sense for this game to have that. Especially, with them, not having a subspace emissary. Which, doesn't mean there won't be a single-player component at all. I think it'd be cool to make, again, as we mentioned before, a melee-style adventure mode, and having it just be 4 players. I think that could be a lot of fun, especially if they have a focus on boss-type characters as seen here. Having multiple players could be, a really advantageous element to this.
And it, for people like me who like to collect trophies, it's also a nice way to get multiple trophies at once. Right. Because theoretically, you beat the game with these 3 characters, you would not just get 1 trophy, but Mario, Mega Man's, and Lucario's trophy. Right. So it'd be a nice quicker way to unlock it. So, it's hard to say. You'd want more clarification from this, but no, it just raises more questions.
I mean, the only other factor that I don't think we mentioned before that suggests that this may be a boss-type character as opposed to a stage hazard is we've actually, at E3, we actually got some footage. They actually had a battle that took place in this arena, and the Yellow Devil never appeared during that battle. So, it's possible he's just really infrequent, or maybe you can turn off stage hazards, or the fact that he is that he is a boss character.
Now that's an interesting idea. I don't think we've ever approached before. Is the idea that you can turn off stage hazards, right? Which would be kind of brilliant, because that's been the whole, I don't know if you follow the whole thing with Project M. Right. But basically what that game is a they're fixing some things that fans want, adding in characters from the old games like Roy and Mewtwo, but also taking all the stages and making them, to me, as bland as possible by having nothing happen, making them small and boring and the same as all the same as Final Destination, just with different window dressing. Right. However, to combat this, or maybe to help out the people who want to play this competitively, maybe they do have an option to turn off stage hazards and make it more like Project M. It'd be an interesting feature, and it would save people programming time.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, it would. I mean, I can't see any negatives to having that feature. It would let people who want to play competitively do so, and let others who enjoy Smash Brothers for what it is, do so as well. Because I guess because if you're playing completely seriously, for better or worse, that means you're stuck to Battlefield or Final Destination.
Or a couple other stages that fit the mold and don't mess with you too much. Right,
which is, for the most part, non-existent. Most of the levels do dick around with you, which I enjoy. I like because we've talked about before. For me, the whole thing about Smash Brothers, it's about adaptation, not just to your opponents, but to the arena, the changing battlefield. Which is why I didn't mind tripping. I thought it was more about how you cope with that than it was with the fact that it happened. With that said, I'm not going to mind the fact that tripping appears to be gone in this game.
Thank God.
Yeah, but it just never bothered me on that level because I've always treated this game as just how you adapt to the battle. Yeah, so I'm curious to see where they go with this. Like, I really do hope that this is an element of the story mode, and that is 3-player, 4-player co-op, and that there actually will be, that melee-style mode back here, with perhaps, refined, and, the fact that they're not going to be wasting effort on a Subspace Emissary might mean that they might actually make this a more fleshed out, just really cool mode.
I hope so.
Yep. Well, I think that wraps up our Smash Brothers update discussion. If you like this discussion, please make sure to check out our Facebook and Twitter pages at GameXplain. You can find links to them in the description below. And of course, make sure to check out our other discussion that we posted this week, being of Lucario, where we go way into detail about what all it could mean, including if he has a Mega Evolution form. And make sure to keep an eye on GameXplain.com for more on Super Smash Bros., Wii U, and 3DS, and other things gaming as well. Alright, thanks guys. Bye.